we'll start with presentation.
Please. We'll call the meeting to order, and Ms. Yolanda, roll call.
Mayor Cantrell,
Present.
Councilmember King, Director Barnes, Director Duplessis,
Present.
Director Johnson, Director Guzman, Director Pacho,
Here.
Director Sloss,
Here.
Director Howard, Director Schulis,
Here.
Director Taylor. Mayor, we proceed with our presentation items.
Sure, we are lacking a quorum at this time. We are awaiting one member to attend this meeting. And in order to continue and move us forward, I would love to start with presentations if possible. But prior to, I think this may be a good time just to make some opening remarks. First of all, happy Infrastructure Week. One of the most affluent boards in this city who, at a particular time of infrastructure, this board has been front and center. And so I just want to say thank you so much for how you all have been consistently focusing on the priorities of this community. And I know with us being here now 4 years, last Saturday made my 4 years mayor, 4th year as mayor, and you know, when we came in during that time, the Sewage and Water Board, our utility, was the priority then and remains the priority today. Significant improvements have been made in that period of time. This board, making sure that we had solid and sound leadership present. We have that. An executive director. I remember going through 3, almost 4 interims before hiring our executive director, Mr. Ghassan Corbin, who's been with us for 3 years plus. Thank you, Ghassan. I believe I texted Ghassan last night and I said, thank you for not wavering and sticking by my side. Leadership matters. And when you have a team, it all takes a team of leaders rowing in the same direction, and you have been nothing but doing that. Thank you so much, Ghassan. Even as relates to the transition team working vigorously, I know from November of 2017 up until May of 18, coming with those recommendations of power sources and switching the power of our utility. That would be a force multiplier relative to our infrastructure and this utility. Also, as it relates to our business community, laboring in as well, leaning in, saying, listen, this is our time to redirect our power sources for real redundancy. We knew earlier on, as we combed through layers of challenges, we found that we had cross-contamination going. We moved very quickly to address cross-contamination. People forget about those things. We moved very quickly to remove debris out of our storm drains that had not been moved since Hurricane Katrina. Vehicles stuck in the drains in our canals. We moved very quickly with picking up a fair share agreement and movement to get more dollars from our tax dollars generated in New Orleans, but redirected back here focusing on infrastructure that allowed us to put the frequency changers in place. We improved turbines. We have done so much to get to where we are today, but what we're taking up today, both the power station and automatic meters, we are moving in the right direction, but it's all because of the leadership that you all have been providing consistently over the past 4 years. So I just have to say thank you for that. And I think Infrastructure Week is the best time to do it. On yesterday, I had the opportunity of speaking or really leading, the city leading in a discussion with the U.S. Conference of Mayors relative to Infrastructure Week, where the city of New Orleans is on the platform, literally sharing best practices, but demonstrating how you can face a challenge. You can't fix it overnight, but every step of progress is meaningful. And this city is doing it with federal resources. We're on that platform where the government is looking to us as the model. That's where we are. And it's not something that we have to make up, but it's something that I believe that we all need to believe that is happening, because we are being believed across the country and really across the world about what we're doing in the city of New Orleans. We also saw, prior to that, the CEA between the Sewage and Water Board, Entergy moving forward. I was allowed and very grateful to approve that, and working with Entergy on a timeline that was beneficial to the city of New Orleans, making sure that we stayed fiscally prudent, utilizing our certificate of indebtedness to put forward resources, not ARPA money, not waiting on IJA money, but the certificate of indebtedness that was taken out by my team right at the start of the pandemic. And I knew then, and we knew then, that it would be a resource for us to tap into. But you know what? We did not know which project that we would lean on. But that was the whole purpose of having a COI. We could be flexible in the time of need and in the time of the need for cash flow. So what did we do? We tapped into that COI, advancing $15 million. Should we need to continue to tap into it to advance an additional $15 million? We are in a position to do it, and we will do it. We've made that commitment. But this is what I meant from the very beginning in talking to others and even the Business Council that was pushing us to allocate ARPA, but saying, hey, the administration, my team, needed to do the due diligence to determine where the resources would flow from, because we have to be responsible for administering the budget of the city of New Orleans and ensuring that we keep our credit score where it needs to be, and we are fiscally sound and able so that we can maximize the financial position that this city is in. None of this happens overnight, but it does take the ability to look at the entire picture and make decisions accordingly. Not a piecemeal approach is going to deal with big problems or big challenges and the ability to solve them. So with that, I'm also going to talk about the win-win that we were able to usher in with our local delegation with the House Bill 652 that did pass. And while we knew that that started with a direct focus on this utility in a negative manner, we were able to turn it around and make it a positive for the city, for our customers, for this utility, for this board. And so I'm proud of that as well. So, but we know with billing, AMI is the solver. That's the solution. And this board has moved that forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ghassan Corbin. You can start with the presentation aspects of what we will be taking up today. And hopefully my little spiel is giving Alejandro a little more time. But I'll call that a win-win too. So with that, Mr. Ghassan.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Mayor. Very well said, as always. And to echo one phrase you said, leadership does matter. And you and the board have been a game changer for the Sewage and Water Board, motivating us and pushing us to do all the right things. So I can't thank you enough. And the range of emotions today is it's amazing. I'm giddy, I'm nervous, I'm excited, it's all of that. And you know, I'm so excited for my staff who've been working so hard to deliver these projects. And they're, again, motivation by the leadership and the encouragement that you've been giving us. So just elated to be here today. So the first resolution, which we will not vote on, obviously, until we have quorum, will have to do with the smart meter program. Also, we're referring to it as AMI. Eventually, as we roll it out, the new brand will be the smart meter. So about a year ago, you gave us the green light to move forward with this project. You allowed us to bring on a program manager. We selected Jacobs to help us put an RFP together. And in a minute, you'll hear more about the detailed process and a lot of the details and nuances about the program. But we took us a year, and you see why it took us this long to get us to this point where we finally selected a vendor to actually install the smart meters for us. And that vendor is Aquametric. We have a representative here today. If we have any questions, we're happy to ask him to come to the table if we need to. But the resolution that you'll have in front of you that for consideration will allow us to negotiate and sign a contract with Aquametric to keep things moving and hopefully allow us to start implementation as early as the last quarter of this year. Again, just couldn't be more exciting. Obviously, the selection process was tremendously detailed. It was done very, very well. It took a lot of work, and I do have to thank the selection committee by name, if I may, if you indulge me. It was initially led by Tyler Antrop. You all know Tyler. We threw at him this project, so he was the internal lead working with Jacobs. We brought Rebecca Johnsey, who will be the program manager on the technical side, leading that project moving forward. You'll hear from Rebecca in a minute. In more details, we had Renee Gonzalez. You all know Renee, and we have Kenny Bouvier, who runs our meter shop, intimately involved with all the ins and outs of our meters, and was very instrumental being on the selection committee, making sure we select the best product that the city deserves. And the last person on the committee was Kyle Bro. He is a young, talented engineer. He makes me excited about the future of this utility, just like Rebecca and Caitlin Tamrak. It just gives us hope that this utility will be in good hands once we move on, and eventually. So with that, again, I want to do also ask the procurement department. Cash, I think, is here somewhere, leading a very involved selection process on this project as well as others. She's been very busy, to say the least. So thank you so much, Cash. And then lastly, the IT team, led by Melinda Myers, who's been, again, tremendously helpful, making sure we dot our I's and cross our T's. So with that, I'd like to introduce Rebecca Johnsey to present to you the AMI project.
Good morning, everyone. As Ghassan said, my name is Rebecca Johnsey. I've been with the board for the last 6.5 years, working in engineering and in project management, and I will be taking over the program management for the AMI, our smart meter infrastructure project, for our design and implementation phases. So I know everyone in this room especially has been working extremely hard on this program. I'm excited. I think everyone's excited. This is a huge step for us and our future moving forward. So I just want to update you and remind you of our current metering needs. We have approximately 390,000 residents in the city and millions of visitors each year, which translates to approximately 140,000 service connections. That's 140,000 service connections that we're going to be replacing with smart meter infrastructure. And at this time, we only have one current tower that is in our Algiers location that has network infrastructure on it, but we don't have anything deployed across the city as far as network is concerned for an AMI infrastructure. Go to the next page. This is our program summary. As we're looking at our program, you can see where we are right here. We're working on getting our meter vendor in place. Once we have the contract signed, we anticipate a 3-year deployment to have all of the meters in the ground and all of the infrastructure in place with a 20-year life cycle for these meters. All right, you can go to the next page. So the procurement we utilized to select our AMI smart meter vendor was an RFP, a request for proposal. This type of procurement is used to solicit proposals for goods and services where price is not the primary determining factor. One of the great things about RFPs is it allows for the negotiations of best and final offers, which we did utilize for this procurement. And all terms, including price, will be negotiated after the selection of the vendor prior to contract award. So the time frame that we utilized in this process, and keep in mind this is very simplified because we had a lot of meetings for this procurement, but we did start advertising December 13th with the initial proposals due February 18th. We had presentations by all 7 of our proposers on April 4th that especially highlighted the software because a lot of the software applications are proprietary information. So you had to actually visually see how you could interact with that software. because it's a very important component of how you interact with the data and how you can utilize that data moving forward. And then we got to a selection by the committee, a recommended selection on May 11th. So you can see at the bottom, the 7 proposers that we had received was Aclara, Amoresco, Aquametric, Core & Main, Itron, Mueller, and Sustainability Partners. This was really exciting because these are 7 fantastic companies. I mean, these are world-class companies, so we knew we were in good hands as we went forward. So you can go ahead to your next slide. This is just an overview of the technology, just to get everyone familiar with it, because it is extremely complex when you start looking at all of the details. The first program component is the actual equipment. So these are at the service locations. You have a meter, and then you have the MIU on top of it. So the meter itself can be 2 different types of technologies. It can be static, which is also called ultrasonic, which it's no moving parts. It's one piece that you put in the ground, or you can have a PD, or positive displacement, which is a mechanical meter. This means that there are moving parts inside of the meter, so over time it has the ability to wear down. However, that is the tried and true technology. Mechanical meters are what have been in the ground for 50 plus years. It's what we have in our system. They're very good. They're very reliable. Ultrasonic is newer. It's been used much longer in Europe than it has in the United States, but it is generally where the technology is going, and that is where all of your R&D monies are going towards static meters. Either one is a fantastic choice, and the beauty is that we can pick either one in our design phase of our project. The MIU is the antenna that connects to the meter. So this sends the data, collects and sends the data through our network. So this is your smart portion of your smart meters. The next component is your network. Oh, sorry.
Where is that antenna? Is it in the meter box?
Yes, so it actually attaches directly to the meter, and there is a small, I'm gonna say mushroom cap, but it's very small. It's all ADA compliant. It goes about 1/8 of an inch above the lid.
So it'll be outside of the metal, yeah.
Yeah, but it looks like a black circle that sits right on top of that lid.
Okay.
And so we are planning to utilize our cast iron lids, because we all know that design is very important to the city of New Orleans. So we didn't want to take away from that design at all. Are there any other questions on that? Nope. Okay. The next program component is the network. So this is what I was talking about. So you have a field area network. This is the small network that is distributed throughout the area. Generally speaking, you can have anywhere from 11 pieces of infrastructure up to thousands of pieces of infrastructure, depending on what type of network that you pick. And then when you look at the wide area network, the WAN, that is your big infrastructure, your big network. So you can do cellular, you can do fiber, or you can do radio. Cellular is newer technology. It uses the cellular towers that are already up around the city. The infrastructure exists. Radio is what would be considered your tried and true. It's what has been utilized most in the past. And fiber, we didn't get into too much because we actually did not receive proposals around the use of a fiber network. The next component is your software.
I have a question. Are any of these networks more sort of storm resistant than the others?
They're all dependent on towers going high up into the air and sending out a signal. So no matter what type of network you're utilizing, because we don't have fiber run throughout our entire city, connecting the entire, every single, house throughout fiber. So realistically, for the city of New Orleans, we're going to be using towers. So every time you put up a tower, right, you have to worry about storms knocking it down. The beauty of what the propagation studies that we requested is that I think it's 86%, correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, that has double redundancy. Mm-hmm. So 86% of our meters will be seen by at least 2 towers, and I think 46% will actually be seen by 3. So you have redundancy to make sure that you are safe in the storms. And also with this technology, there's different locations where the data can be stored. So the data can be stored at the MIU for, I think it's 28 days, and I apologize because there was a lot of numbers thrown out here, so I'll have to double check. But for a significant amount of time, you can store the data on the MIU itself at the location. You also can store the data at the data collector, so in your towers. and you have the ability to send that at a later date. And the amount of time is significant. This is not a few days, this is months that we have the ability to store this data. You also have the ability to drive by and pick up reads. If you're not getting the data, you can drive by and pick up reads. And then in the absolute worst case scenario, let's say we go way beyond anything you could think of, you can still pick up the final read. You just might not have the granularity that you would usually have of the data. So there's a lot of redundancy built into the technology.
Question. You mentioned that there's networking available in Algiers. And as you were talking about the networking that's needed for the city of New Orleans, does this require construction of a new tower?
Yes, so our proposal requested 11 sites where an antenna would be constructed, which includes the addition of 400-foot poles. They're not this major tower that you're thinking about.
And Algiers was the pilot,
Yeah.
so
That-
that's fine.
That was a big deal in the French Quarter and the Marigny when we had to do it for telephone services. In our historic districts, of which I'm a resident, these sorts of things may seem very small to in terms of putting in a tower, but they're a very big deal to my neighbors. So as we talk about where these towers are going to be and what they're going to look like, I want you all to be very sensitive to that and be very judicious about where they go.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, and it's a separate, it's a separate type of equipment than AT&T and the like, but we're still having to deal with the 5G, the fiber that is being deployed and will be deployed citywide. But we can't wait for all of that to happen before we deal and provide smart meters here.
Yes.
One more tower question, since we're on that subject. Is it possible and is consideration given to piggybacking on somebody else like Entergy?
Yes, so
We've already
that.
got that structure in place.
Correct. So one of the proposals that was received did have the option to look at a partnership with the Entergy network that's in place, but they weren't able to provide that as a solution as part of this proposal because the agreement would have to be done prior to between Sewage and Water Board and Entergy to utilize that network.
They couldn't do it because of what?
The agreement would have had to be in place prior to bidding, so it wouldn't have allowed for all of our proposers. It would have narrowed it to one supplier if we would have said we had to utilize that network.
Okay.
So when we wrote the RFP, we wrote it to get as many possible bidders as possible, so we weren't allowed to utilize that network. There would have had to be an agreement in place prior to.
Thank you.
Yes, so one more time on the towers. The current, which is the initial propagation study, did have 11 sites. These are all Sewage and Water Board owned sites. However, that can be tweaked as needed if there's a situation where we can't put it in a certain historic location and things like that. You can add additional infrastructure and lower the height if needed and still have the same coverage. So as we start getting into those design details, we'll definitely have to bring in, all of the appropriate folks and all the appropriate stakeholders to make sure that we're hitting all of the needs.
Absolutely.
I think it's an important point that you made, that we can utilize existing sewage and water board sites and not necessarily have to pick new sites. I think that's an important point.
Please lead with that, because again, we did not have a good experience with towers in our neighborhood before, and it doesn't have anything to do with us as an agency. It has everything to do with that particular word and what it meant to us from other entities in the past.
Yeah, and the outreach around it too. I think could have been better.
Thank you. It's great feedback. Okay, the next component is the software. So the software includes the head-in system, the meter data management system, the customer service software. So these are all the different software components that the bidders would utilize to get this project completed. So that software starts with the installation management. So the installation is the big portion of this project, and managing this vast amount of installation is a huge lift. So that work order management system is the first component of the software. Next, you have the way that you're pulling in all this massive amounts of data and how it's translating into a usable format, both for the board as well as for the customers. That's your data management system. And then you have your customer-facing portal that would also be used by our internal customer service representatives, and how those interact with each other. Can you mirror? Do you have single sign-on billing? All of those things were discussed in detail and talked about when they presented their solutions to the selection committee.
I'm not going to ask But so the software, I mean, obviously that's a point of failure. It could be a point of failure. Billing, this contemplates integration with all the way through our GL and so forth, right?
Yes, correct. So
Thank
one of the requirements was that it could integrate with our current systems in place. And through the selection, we decided that WaterSense, WaterSmart, can't remember which one, Smart, would be our front-facing customer portal. It has a bunch of feature functionalities. It can integrate with our current systems on the back end, and it will allow our customer service representatives to see the same screen that our customer is viewing, so that you can really dig down into the data, and you can show them exactly what they're looking at the same time in real time. And that's a really big tool.
It's huge, yeah.
So talk about bandwidth and extra storage needs. Because with all of this data, it's gonna be a need to store it somewhere. Where are we with that in terms of the proposals?
So that is part of the software as a service. You can see the SaaS. So that storage and that backup capacity would not be on our servers. It would be cloud-based storage. And so that's part of the software packages. So we wouldn't have to deal with those storage concerns.
And you want it cloud-based.
Absolutely.
That's the future, which the future is now. That's exactly where we're going.
Yeah. And so some of the extra capabilities that we did ask, as I was talking about, is the single sign-in, the additional analytics, like the customer can say, okay, where am I using the most water during the day? Let me drill down into that data. Where do I want the maximum bill to be? What can I do to fix that? What can I do to conserve water? And we also wanted the ability to look at acoustic leak detection, and that would allow us to determine leaks within our system in a very small geographic area. So that helps us manage our infrastructure so much more than us waiting for a break and then having to come back retroactively and fix it. So if you see the bottom, you have the network as a service, software as a service, or the entire thing is metering as a service. So any of these unique components can be offered as a service, or it can be board owned and operated. So those were some of the requests that we made in our proposal. So if you go to the next page. These are the evaluation criteria that we utilize to look at each one and rank each one of these proposals. I'm not going to read them. They're very long. You're welcome to. In the middle, you see the key points for each one of those metrics, and then the questions that we had to ask and answer as evaluation committee members. So for each one of these categories, we had to ask those questions to ourselves and to each other to make sure that we were meeting everything we needed. So how the evaluation happened is everyone received the proposals, each evaluation committee member individually, and reviewed them, and there was no discussion. Then in our public meeting, we came in, our technical advisor, Jacobs, gave a presentation on their technical findings on the proposal based on these evaluation criteria with their pros and cons for each proposal. And then we went through each different category, and each individual member ranked, gave their personal rank. If there was ever any discrepancies, we discussed it until consensus was achieved, because this was consensus scoring. So at that point, after we finished all of the evaluation, which took a very long time and a lot of very heated discussion, we agreed upon technical scores and we submitted to accept those scores. At that time, none of the evaluation committee members had seen pricing. Pricing was not disclosed to any evaluation committee member until after technical scores were complete. And at that point, the price proposals were shown by Jacobs. They were put into the formula to determine what the best offering for the Sewage and Water Board was to get the ranking. That formula was straight division, and it was disclosed in the RFP, so every vendor knew what was coming. Any questions on that? Okay. So through that whole process, the committee determined to recommend the selection of Aquametric. There is a representative here in the room if there's any questions, but what really made Aquametric stand out, again, 7 fantastic companies, but where they stood apart was that they had an optional network that was Sewage and Water Board owned, but operated and maintained by the vendor, which saved us 5% of total project costs. So that was a very attractive offering that was not offered by the other companies. And there's also an existing pilot program that's currently operating in Algiers, and it's the longest pilot program in anywhere in the United States. And so that's fantastic for our city, and it's fantastic for this company who has had a stake in this city for so long.
Where are they based? Where are they based?
In New Orleans.
New Orleans company.
Aquametric,
Yeah.
right, Gary?
We have an office in Jefferson Parish, but based in Riverside, California. We're the census vendor here in Louisiana, Texas, and California.
Okay. So California company, huh?
Apologize. I only deal with the local office. Their proposed staff is extremely
That's
experienced.
true.
They have a huge holding in the AMI area. They're a very large company and they're very good at what they do. And one thing that's very interesting for the city of New Orleans is they're entering into a joint venture agreement with EMP Enterprises, which is a local certified DBE firm for the installation part of this contract. So that's fantastic for the city and its residents, and it really brings a lot of knowledge to our city, specifically in this sphere. And then,
What's the percentage of DBE participation? You know,
20,
We're just over 27.
27?
Yes, sir.
the requested DBE percentage was 7%. And so this joint venture brings it to 27%. As far as meter technology, one of the design points that we're going to have to make as we go into the design phase is whether we go with that static meter or we go with the mechanical meter. So the non-moving or the moving parts meter. And so one of the great things about this company is they have tried and true track record for both technologies. So no matter what design path we go forward, they have the solution and a very good solution with a very long history. So the final page is their pricing involved with their best and final offer. So the system I was talking about is on the far right, that column. So you can see your meter replacements are your top 3 lines. So it's approximately $50 million of your total cost. And if you go down to the last 4 lines, those are your initial cost, your ongoing cost, your customer portal cost, so your total life cycle cost. You can see is right at $63.5 million. So that translates to $442.56 per meter.
I do have a quick question. So on the first slide, you talked about the number of residents and the number of service connections. Is there if the city increases in the number of residents, how does that play into the pricing and just say an influx of individuals to the city of New Orleans that will rely on this network?
So the network itself, the propagation study, as long as it's within the current bounds, the network wouldn't have to change.
And
So
what about
the actual
connections?
bandwidth that we're utilizing in the network is extremely small.
Mhm.
And the fantastic thing about that is that means we can utilize that network for other systems. We can use that for SCADA. We can use that for smart, city infrastructure as we move forward. As far as actually putting in each meter, we actually have a price per meter, purchase price per meter, agreed in the contract. We have extreme granularity in our pricing. There's almost 100 different line items that are per price, so we can really scale it as needed.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that Director Guzman has joined us. Any other questions relative to the presentation of our smart meter?
Just one more. One thing you didn't touch upon is staffing and training as a part of the proposal. With these new softwares, I'm thinking about the current meter readers. I'm thinking future capacity, training needs, education, and what that training component is going to look like, because we know with the billing in the past, the new systems, that was a sticky point. So I just wanted you to touch on that before we leave this topic.
Okay, so the training program and the requests that we made in the RFP were extremely extensive, having learned from past experiences. And so they will have on-site training throughout the program, and they will have continued training throughout. One of the great things about the system is because we already have this AMI in Algiers, we have used the system before. So we have used their platforms before, so our meter shop is extremely comfortable in utilizing the data, digging down into customer information to see what's going on with that meter and with that customer. But the training component is very important, and it's something that we are going to continue to do throughout the program. It's not going to just be one and done, and we do have line items in there for the continued training as frequency is needed.
Well, along those lines, are we going to hear about implementation program, including training for staff, communication to community members, geographical coverage, and so on?
Yes, so after we select a vendor, that's when the negotiation begins for their contract. So part of those negotiating terms are gonna be drilling down on some of the design data. So really narrowing down on that propagation study. What does it look like? How many towers? Where will they be located? Making sure all of those design points are really tightened. Talking in detail about that training program. What does that look like? All of the details that you really need to move forward. It's still gonna be at a very high level design, 10-15%, but all of those optional choices, because we really wanted the options out there just to see what was out there and see what we could get, will be really narrowed down to a small focus so that we know what system we want, what options we want or don't want, and as we move forward, we can definitely present as needed.
And building in the community engagement component will be embedded in the process. That's when we negotiate the contract.
One of those things, I noticed that $66,481,000 is roughly equivalent to our over 60 receivables. Did anybody take a look at how these would probably profit from this? I think we would make money on this deal if we get 100% accurate billing and people paying their bills. They might think of the financial side of this thing.
Well, there's no doubt this will improve our relationship with our customer and will definitely improve that area.
Collection.
If we don't have any
It's
more,
not so much making money, but it's just everything is fair. We're getting our fair share based on the services that the utility is providing.
I bet over 20 years we'll make money on the
I
deal.
agree. So the only thing that I would add that Ms. Yolanda, I want the record to reflect as leaders at the table here today, but we know we're building for the future. And one of the things that we have to be focused on as our priority, even though we won't be here 20 years from now, meaning in these roles, but we know the equipment, the lifespan of the equipment is 20 years. So we have to factor in a maintenance and a replacement plan because it costs money. And so good stewards right now, we have to make sure that we're focusing on that as we're building for the future and for future leaders of this utility, because we want to make sure, well, one, we know that we're doing work that has been needed to happen for decades. We do not want our city to be back here 20 years from now. And so in thinking through that lens, I think it's important just putting it on the table and officially that we are focused on where this city will be, where our customers will be 20 years from now based on the investments that we're making today. One of the things that I've discovered firsthand, particularly in this role, is that we have had a history in our city of not maintaining our assets. That's why we're here. That's why all the issues, all the challenges is because we haven't done a great job historically. But we're doing that work today, again, building for our future. But we have a responsibility to push a plan, a replacement plan, as we think about, where we are now. So I just wanted to state that publicly and put it on the public record because this board, we're thinking about that today. And we don't want, again, for this city and our people to have to be where we found ourselves 4 years ago, coming in and picking up cans. So we don't want to kick cans. We want to create a system that will continue to be innovative and creative and evolve over time.
Right. Spot on, Mayor. And I have to tell you that not only we're committed to building a new infrastructure for the next 20, 30, 50 years, we're also building a program committing the most robust maintenance program we can, and that presents us with an opportunity to elevate the current meter reading staff and others who are willing to be elevated to be trained and become more sophisticated, because this is a new technology and they'll be part of that,
Absolutely.
maintaining the system so it lasts. But yet it will require future leaders to maintain that commitment. So,
Right.
yeah.
And this utility is thinking about that. And it's
Absolutely.
important.
That's correct.
So we're not, oftentimes, the work of the leaders kind of gets dumbed down.
Right.
and even overtime. But I believe that we've pivoted to a different direction and focus that this city really does deserve. And I think we have to kind of pause for a minute and receive just the gratitude and appreciation that comes with that, because it's deserving. You all deserve that. So thank you. All right.
We need a resolution?
We need a motion.
Motion
Now
to,
we have our quorum.
Resolution 0091, 2022. Very excited about it.
So we have a motion. We have Director Sloss, who provided that motion. It's been seconded by Director Dr. Duplessis. Any questions? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
All right.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Congratulations.
All right.
We've officially moved forward past the resolution authorizing and advancing our smart meter program for the city of New Orleans.
Yay.
Historic. Yeah. And I will say all in the midst of a pandemic. We didn't even mention the pandemic. We talked about all the progress. So in spite of, we made tremendous progress. Yes. All right, so Ms. Yolanda.
Yes, now we're ready for our next two individual resolutions regarding the electric substation, the CEA with Entergy New Orleans. We'll have Gassan introduce our outside counsel who helps with negotiations with Piatek with Odell Parsons. Gassan?
Yeah, thank you. And again, another exciting item in front of you, and just kind of to set the tone. We have two resolutions in front of you. One has to do with the CEA between the Sewage and Water Board and Entergy. And that's a continuation of the good work that we did last week, approving the CEA between the city and the Sewage and Water Board, allowing the transfer of funds to support the substation work. I'm happy to announce that the transfer of the first $15 million happened yesterday, so it's in our possession, which puts us in a very good position to transfer the funds to Entergy once the CA is approved, to maintain the schedule that's been dictated by other outside influences to stay on track and deliver the substation in 2023. So it's very exciting. So obviously in front of you is that CA for your approval. And while that's required, it's on individual vote, I think it would be helpful to hear more about the other set of agreements that would be in front of you to vote on. So, and then we can come back and vote for that. So the other set basically is a series of agreements that we have to enter with Entergy in order to allow the construction of the substation. It speaks to the maintenance. So there's an agreement in principle, that's the overarching agreement that has three separate agreements embedded in it. It's the rate schedule, the electric service agreement, and the additional facilities agreement. And with us today is Luke Piantek, who would go through some of the again, the details and the specifics to each of those agreements and how important they are to allow us to move forward. So again, very, very exciting. So many people to thank. I mean, it's just very, very exciting. Obviously, the City Council has been instrumental. Entergy's willingness to partner with us, it was imperative that they're at the table, agreeing to take this on. This is probably one of the biggest legacy projects that we all are sitting here, approving. So, very, very exciting. So with
And
that,
I must thank the city attorney's office as well, and also my own team, Ed Morris, who's our deputy special counsel of in-house, and Maribeth Arsenault, who's been working very hard on this as well.
Yep, thank you all.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, Luke.
Good morning, Mayor Cantrell, board members, good morning. My name is Luke Piantek. I'm with the law firm of Rodell Parsons. I've been retained as outside regulatory counsel to the Sewage and Water Board on this issue. As Mr. Corbin just said, we have worked for months extensively on this set of agreements, which quite frankly dovetails nicely into the discussion we just had about advanced metering, because this is another major step in modernizing the Sewage and Water Board's activities and their services and their assets. It will enhance the reliability of power supply to the Sewage and Water Board, which is greatly needed. I'm going to talk about the agreement in principle. That's kind of the umbrella agreement. There are several agreements that are incorporated in that agreement in principle, and then I'll talk about the cooperative endeavor agreement separately. So, as you know, the Sewage and Water Board is transitioning from having its primary source of power supply from its own generation to getting power supply from Entergy.
Yep.
The Sewage and Water Board's generating resources are very old. They've been updated over time, but eventually machines break down and become less reliable. Over the last several years, we've had difficulty with backup power from Entergy, mainly because of the restriction on the distribution line that serves the Carrollton campus where most of the equipment is located. So the plan was to have Entergy build a substation. You see them on the highway and in town. It's the big area with all the transformers and all the high voltage transmission lines going to them. They're going to build it on the Carrollton campus area. It's Sewage and Water Board owned property. Mary Beth Arsenault and I are working on the servitude agreements and all to allow them to put that substation there and maintain it. Entergy will receive funds from Sewage and Water Board, and then they will build the substation, own it, operate it, and maintain it. So the question's come up a couple times, why can't the Sewage and Water Board do this? Why can't the Sewage and Water Board build the substation and own the substation? Technically feasible, technically possible. I would advise against that, mainly because once that substation is interconnected to Entergy's high voltage transmission system, it becomes part of the transmission system. Entergy has to comply with innumerable federal regulations on reliability, from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the National Electric Reliability Corporation, Southern Electric Reliability Corporation, MISO, it goes on and on and on. Because if there's one problem on a transmission system, that can cascade and cause outages in multiple states. So Sewage and Water Board doesn't want to have its hands on an asset that might cause blackouts. Entergy is experienced in running these things and building these things. It makes more sense for them to own it and operate it. To do that, though, we have to transfer public funds. That's where the cooperative endeavor agreement comes in. So we've negotiated extensively with Entergy. There's a lot of back and forth. We've had a lot of good input from the council advisors and from Councilman Giarrusso and Moreno. They've been very involved in this process as well. Like I said, Entergy is going to build it. They're going to own it. They're going to operate it and maintain it. It is standard industry practice when an electric utility builds a large asset like this for one customer, for that customer to pay for the asset. When Entergy builds like a power station that's going to serve all of its customers, well, it just puts it in the rate base and all the customers pay for it. This is an asset really for Sewage and Water Board, so Sewage and Water Board is going to give the $30 million to Entergy to build it. It's called a contribution in aid of construction, or in the regulatory speak, we call that a CIAC because we love our acronyms. We just are addicted to acronyms. But Entergy will take that money and build a substation. If it costs more than the $30 million, Entergy will pick up that balance, and they will charge us for that balance as well through a new rate schedule called the Large Municipal Electric Rate Schedule, which we also negotiated extensively with Entergy. It's going to be designed specifically for municipal entities, including Sewage and Water Board. So the agreements that go, are incorporated into the agreement in principle are the electric service agreement. This is, these things are kind of repetitive, but that's how Entergy does things. It's how every utility does things, electric utility. So the electric service agreement just says how long the contract is going to be, what rate schedule is going to apply. That's the large municipal we just discussed. And some other terms and conditions that go with that. Then we have the large municipal rate schedule. The Sewage and Water doesn't have to sign that. That's just a rate schedule that Entergy is going to supply to the City Council to get approved. We do have to sign the agreement in principle. We do have to sign the electric service agreement, and we do have to sign the last agreement, which is the additional facilities agreement. And again, that's a little bit repetitive, but that's an agreement that talks about how Entergy is going to build the system, maintain it, operate it, and how long they're going to do that for. A couple of important points I think should be noted that we negotiated and got Entergy to agree to. They're going to provide monitoring reports every 2 months as we go along, so that we know, they're going to say, here's the budget that we estimate to begin with. Around 30 to 32 million is what they're roughly estimating, although costs are increasing, so it may be a little higher than that when we actually put steel in the ground. But as we go, we will see how much they're spending as opposed to the total budget, and whether they're going over budget or whether the estimates are growing. At some point, if it gets too high, if it goes 10% beyond the original total estimate, we have an option to negotiate with them and pull the trigger and get out if we want. Now, we would be responsible for what they've paid to that point and anything they've ordered, that might come in later, but we do have the option to get out if the costs are running well over budget. That's a decision for you to make if and when that happens. But there is an out clause there, and there will be bi-monthly monitoring reports provided to the board and provided to the council as well, so that we can see what's going on. Are they on schedule? Are they on budget? That type of thing. So once this thing is built and up and running, it will supply the primary supply of electricity to the Carrollton campus, and therefore the Sewage and Water Board can scale back its own generation and use the best of it as backup supply in case the transmission line goes down. I think it's also important to understand that the transmission lines are those big towers, and they do go down in hurricanes, but they're much more hurricane resistant than distribution lines. Those little poles that go along the street. We're talking the big metal towers. The lines are way above the ground, so they're much more resilient as far as hurricane protection and that kind of thing. But in the event it does go down, we do have our own generation to back it up. So it would greatly increase the reliability of electric supply to the Sewage and Water Board. These things have a lifetime of about 30 to 40 years. So once it's in place, it should last about that long. There will be some modifications and upgrades because some of the equipment wears out over time. But generally, the substation will last about 30 to 40 years. So it's a long-term investment. After looking at all the documents and hiring outside counsel, consultants for us, J. Kennedy and Associates, who are experts in rate making and rate design. They looked at the rate schedule. They looked at all the agreements. They said it all makes sense, economically. Entergy said it's going to cost this. We had our guys scrub that down. They presented the rate schedule to us. We had J. Kennedy scrub that down, and they said it all seems reasonable and fair. And with that, I think these agreements are reasonable. I think they're prudent. They're in the public interest, and I would recommend that the board approve them, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much for your presentation and overview. It's good that your attorneys get educated in this process, and it's very clear that you have been. So with that, this is absolutely a step in the right direction, and a lot of thought partners, a lot of partners that have been at the table to make this happen. So with that, we need a motion to approve
The CEA.
the CEA. And that's been motion made by Director Pacho,
Second.
seconded by Director Dr. Scholas. Any questions?
Do we have an idea if this will save us on fuel, save us money?
Yes, over 5 times the amount we're paying right now.
So what's the thumbnail number on that?
Well, the only way to quantify it is to actually experience it, but we estimate anywhere between $3 to $5 million.
That's huge.
And then that's what that savings allows us to afford this.
Congratulations to you, Mayor, and everybody who worked on this. 'Cause
Yeah.
I think this is the single most doable increase in safety for the citizens of the city that I can think of. This is a
Absolutely.
Specific project. So.
Absolutely. Thank you. Right, so it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, it's passed, and congratulations once again.
A motion for Resolution 93, 2022 for the agreement in principle.
Thank you very much. We need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Director Dr. Duplessis, seconded by Director Guzman. Any questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the resolution is passed, and again, congratulations. All right, Ms. Shalani.
Have one information item, the Safety April 2022 report for your review, and we have no public comments. So Mayor, we're ready for adjournment.
All right, so, this is good.
This is huge. This is
This
gigantic.
is huge. And where are the media cameras now?
Need a motion to adjourn?
Need a motion to adjourn. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you all so much.
This is huge. I mean, it is. It's the single biggest safety